and Chris Wray has been constantly under fire, particularly from the right. You're a former Republican yourself, saying that he is out to get Republicans.
Yeah, another thing that would be stricken from your novel if you tried to put it in. The FBI follows the facts, which is one of the reasons that the Bureau doesn't have friends in high places. If you're a politician, you can't trust the FBI if you've done something shady, because they're going to track it down no matter what party you're affiliated with. Just look at the record of who's been charged with federal corruption offenses in the last few years. The Bureau is an apolitical organization, and it's good for Director Wray to defend it and express his frustration.
Do you think that this is impacting morale at the FBI, these constant attacks?
Oh, I know it is. I mean, I know because I talk to people there. Of course, when good people internalize these lies that they hear over and over again, echoed from President Trump's mouths, but from lots of other mouths, and they take it on board. They think, oh, there was a problem with the Mar-a-Lago search. That's dispiriting for people in the FBI, because these are their neighbors. The FBI is in every community in this country. They go to ball games, there are cookouts, and they hear this nonsense echoed back at them, and that's painful.
Let me switch topics for a moment. If you had been the Manhattan DA, you were a former top prosecutor in New York, not the Manhattan DA, but in another role, would you have brought the hush money case?
I wasn't sure that I would have when I read the indictment, but now having seen the case, I'm not sure after investigating it how they wouldn't bring it. They had a much stronger case than I imagined, and they'd be taking a pass on it because of who the defendant was, and that's something you don't ever want to do as a prosecutor.
But what about the fact that the feds, including the Biden DOJ, took a pass on it? And you would think that particularly when it comes to the election piece of this, that is typically something that would be tried in a federal court.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, and so I really don't know. There could be all kinds of reasons that I can't see internal to the Department of Justice.
What do you think is going to happen? I can't imagine there'll be anything but a hung jury, but that's just my...
Actually, I have a different take. I think there's an overwhelming chance of a conviction, a significant but much smaller chance of a hung jury, and zero chance of an acquittal.
Why?
Why zero chance of an acquittal?
No. Why do you think there's more of a chance of a conviction than a hung jury?
Because they built a very strong circumstantial case. They built a building out of a series of bricks that really couldn't be crossed because they were documents, they were texts, they were the words of the defendant before they went to their cooperator at the end. I bet they even debated whether they needed to call Cohen as a cooperator. And that circumstantial case, at least in my experience, having tried a lot of cases, is very, very powerful with the jury.
But it seems to me that this is a different kind of case, right? That the typical legal analysis that I end up doing on typical cases doesn't apply here. That the questions that jurors maybe aren't supposed to be evaluating, like, are we really here over a payout to a porn star with the former president of the United States, who's now the Republican nominee, sitting here? This is what this is all about. I think that may factor into some of the jurors' thinking, even though that's not what the judge is going to instruct them.
Yeah, maybe, but my gut tells me, and I've had a lot of experience, that they'll be impressed with the way in which the prosecution connected it to broader themes, to an election, to the Trump's need, according to the proof, to suppress information, to conceal it from the voters. That kind of stuff rings loud, I think, in the minds of public-spirited citizens. And when you're on a jury, public spirit just flows through you. So that's why I think it's more likely than not to be a conviction.
In 2021, you wrote in your book that you did not think that Biden should pursue federal prosecution of Donald Trump. You said no matter how compelling the roadmap or how powerful the evidence strewn across his history of porn stars and financial fraud. Later, you actually suggested Biden should consider pardoning him. Do you stand by that?
I don't feel that way now, because that was before January the 6th or the Mar-a-Lago case. I don't know how you don't pursue those cases. But I was attracted then, and honestly still am, to the idea that wouldn't it be good if we could get this demagogue off of center stage? I read a piece by a former CIA counterinsurgency person who said the first thing in sort of deprogramming a cult is get the programmer to the corner so you can then let people escape the fog of lies. It would be a whole lot better if we weren't seeing Donald Trump, even in the Manhattan case, on our screens every day.
It must be odd being James Comey. I'm listening to you say this and thinking, oh, the right is going to, be infuriated by what James Comey's saying right now. And then I think about how many people on the left are furious at James Comey about reopening the Hillary Clinton investigation 11 days before the election. They believe that you handed the election to Donald Trump. Do Do you feel like a man without a country?
I don't, for a couple of reasons. First, I don't care that much what the ends of our bell curve think. They're in such bubbles that each thinks I'm on the other team's side. I think there's a whole swath of people in the middle who've taken the time to understand the way in which the FBI conducts itself, who feel pretty good about it. And apart from that, my family loves me, and I feel good about the decisions I made.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.